Hello, everybody. It's Reed and Danny back with another episode of the All Grit Podcast. Danny, say what's up to the people.
What up, gang?
So today is a big episode. It's episode number 2 for us, but it's a big episode because we've been planning this for it's been about 3 weeks in the making. Danny and I have officially finished our first 7-round mocks for the Lions. And these are like my favorite videos to make, so I'm very excited to get into this. My first time doing this with somebody, so it'll be a ton of fun. We get to compare and contrast our picks. The format in which we'll do this is we'll go through my round 1, Danny's round 1, my round 2, Danny's round 2. We'll kind of go through bouncing different players off each other, and we'll talk about some different guys. Just with all that being said, Danny, you got anything to say to the people before we jump right into it?
No, let's get it, man. Let's get it.
Okay, so right off the rip, Danny, round 1, pick 28. I have the Lions going Gray Zabel, the guard/center out of North Dakota State. It kind of frustrates me because I was on this pick right after the Senior Bowl, and that was about 2 weeks ago, almost 3 weeks ago now. And now it's like a very popular pick in mock drafts. So I'm kind of, it doesn't look as cool anymore. It's not as unique anymore, but I still think it's a great pick. Offers you some guard center flexibility. He played tackle in college at North Dakota State. He has that elite athleticism of a tackle, but some concerns with length. Profile more as a guard and even a center at the NFL level. I mean, at the Senior Bowl, he played mainly center and guard and looked just fantastic doing it. Look up his one-on-ones if you're curious, if you have time. Man, his one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl were just amazing. His ability to drop, take another bite in pass rush drills. Took on some of the best guys in the country and really didn't have a bad rep all week. A lot of people, like insiders, talking about he's like the biggest riser right now after the Senior Bowl. So I think it's just a great spot. Late first round, I mean, obviously an edge player would be nice too, maybe even a corner. But, man, the type of player he's going to be, and with the uncertainty with guys like Graham Glasgow, Kevin Zeitler, Frank Ragnow's getting old, I mean, it's nice to have someone who can play guard and center, and I think will be a totally elite player at one of those positions.
That's solid, man. Well, I went a little different direction for my first round pick. At pick 28, I ended up addressing the need of the defensive line, specifically the edge position. And I went with Captain Jack Sawyer, edge out of OSU, man. You know me, if it's Ohio State, man, I don't want nothing to do with it. Go blue all day, but, man, this guy's special. Let me tell you what. He may not be as long as your traditional defensive end, man, but he is 6'5", 260. He is the definition of grit. Just looking at him, you see the grit just glowing off of him. And he's exactly the guy that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell would want to bring into this culture. Obviously, he's a team captain for Ohio State. His last season, he got 9 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and an interception, as many of you guys know. Thing I love about Jack Sawyer, man, is just when his team, when they got their backs pressed up against the wall, man, he just made not only game-changing plays, but game-sealing plays. Obviously, you saw the one in Michigan where he picked off Davis Warren on the goal line. Clearly, that didn't do much for Ohio State, but nonetheless, he did what he had to do to put his team in a position to win. And then the semifinal against Texas, as many of you know, was 4th and goal. Made a strip sack, fumble, touchdown, completely sealed the game and crushed Texas's hopes of going to the championship. So this guy is special, and I think compared to Aiden Hutchinson, they would be a force to be reckoned with. It's tough to say. Ohio State's defensive line obviously had a lot of talent, so he did get some one-on-one looks. And I think he would with Aiden Hutchinson anyways, but it's really hard to tell how he would fit in day one as a starter. But I would be really excited if the Lions drafted Jack Sawyer.
Yeah, I agree with you, Danny. So we both used, just to preface this, guys, we both used mock draft simulators to kind of like get these picks put together here. And, he wasn't there in mine. He was there in Danny's, obviously. I would say if I had to pick between the two, I like Jack Sawyer a tad bit better. Just I think, like Danny said, he's going to be a legit edge rusher in the NFL. I have in my notes here from when I did some scouting. Great motor, good tackler, Lacks maybe some of the athleticism you'd want to see from a guy playing on the edge, but he makes up for it with his motor. He has an elite motor. He's a relentless pass rusher. And, man, scouting him and JT Tuimoloau, these two guys are just elite at their craft. They both have good pass rush plans. They both use their hands in the pass rush and in the run game. It's just easy to see, as much as a Michigan fan, we don't want to admit it, Ohio State's doing something right with their defensive linemen. They all have pretty solid technique. So, Danny, love the pick. Personally, I think both those picks, you really can't. If you end up with one of them two guys at 28, I think you can't be mad as a Lions fan, honestly.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. They're both positions that we need of. And yeah, I would be comfortable with either one.
Yep, agreed. All right, so just keeping it moving into round 2 here, we have pick number 60. I went with his running mate, JT Tuimoloau, the edge player from Ohio State. More of that prototypical size. I want to say he's around 6'6", 270. I don't know if he's the best athlete, and I don't think he has the best bend, but his floor just as a run defender alone is, I think, insane value at number 60. I think day one he serves a legitimate role playing on early downs, and I think he has all the upside to become a 3-down player, especially with his pass rush. Like I said, he jumps off the film to me with his use of his hands, and just he has some different pass rush to him. Watching him and Jack Sawyer work against Texas and Notre Dame was something fun to watch. Even as a guy who doesn't really like Ohio State very much, it was really fun to watch, man. A lot of really good technique. Not quite, I don't think anyone in this class besides maybe Abdul Carter has the motor that Jack Sawyer does, so I can't really compare him there, but just a big, long, athletic dude. He's going to play the edge really well, play the run really well, and I think has all the upside to be a very solid pass rusher as well. Think of, I don't want to say a better Josh Paschal because they're a little bit different players, but a guy that can offer a very similar skill set day one, and a guy that I think will probably end up being a lot better than Josh Paschal. So, no hate to Josh Paschal, but I think that's kind of the role you're looking at with him.
Yeah, I agree, man. If we get any of these edge rushers, it would definitely fulfill a need that we have. If we don't go after Myles Garrett, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely something we need. So for my pick 60, I decided to go with Mr. Trey Harris from Ole Miss. Trey Harris, if he is there at 60, I think that it would be amazing value. He is considered maybe top 5 receiver in the draft. I think that he may be number 1. It could be controversial, but Trey Harris, he's a senior from Ole Miss, standing at 6'3", 210. More bigger receiver, which is definitely something the Lions could use. With Tim Patrick being up to free agency, I do believe that we should sign Tim Patrick to at least another year. But Trey Harris, man, he would be a good, or at least a decent replacement. He's not as big as Tim Patrick, but he would play somewhat of a similar role. His senior year, he ended up having 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. And in 7 of his last 8 games, he ended up averaging over 14 yards per carry, which is just something we need, man. You just need someone to extend the sticks. And if you give Goff another weapon, man. Obviously, you got a lot of mouths to feed in the offense, but man, would it be awesome to have another receiver, young receiver that we could rely on. I think Trey Harris could definitely be that guy.
Yeah, I personally don't know a pile about Trey Harris. I haven't really watched any of his films. I don't want to talk a pile about him because I don't really know much. But from what I've heard, yeah, definitely a solid fit. Like the size, like the ability he brings there. Because this offense really lacked, until Tim Patrick, lacked that big red zone threat receiver. It's really just Sam Laporta was like your big bodied red zone threat. So love the idea of bringing another guy like that in for the Lions if Tim Patrick doesn't walk, you know what I mean? So love that. Good pick from Danny there. Let's just jump straight into round 3 here, Danny. At round 3, pick number 101, I've been going Darian Alexander, the defensive tackle from Toledo. I had never heard of this guy up until about 2 weeks ago at the Senior Bowl. And goodness gracious did he jump off the film, man. He was a legit game record down in Mobile. About 6'3", 6'4", I don't have exact measurements here. About 300 pounds flat. Man, just plays with an edge. He is a legit force. I get it, he played in the MAC. I get it. He played the MAC. He put some good stats in the MAC. I get it. But, man, in the Senior Bowl, that dude flashed some legit potential in the one-on-ones against the run. Had a great week of practice. Looked fantastic. And, man, his tape at Toledo is something fun to watch. Honestly, I kind of caught a little bit of him when I was watching Quinyon Mitchell last year as a corner. And didn't really know who he was, but when I look back at number 9, the defensive line for Toledo, I was like, okay, that makes some sense, I guess. So definitely a legit guy. I mean, double dipping on the defensive line, I think you have to do it this year. I think you have to take at least one edge player, maybe even two, and I think you need a defensive tackle out of this draft class as well. It's pretty deep in the defensive line, man. Darian Alexander, legit, third-round pick, a guy who I think will legitimately be a starter for you at some point. With a guy like Levi Onwuzurike leaving, DJ Reader's got, one more year left in his contract, I believe. Doesn't hurt to get younger there, so.
I actually really like that pick. I think double dipping on the D-line early in the draft is something we need to do. Like you said, DJ Reader, if they don't end up cutting him, he's only got one more year, and I do not think that we'll re-sign him. Just with obviously with all the contracts we got coming up. And Levi is most likely going to the Jets. I don't have any inside information, but most likely going to the Jets.
Yeah, him and Derek Barnes both.
He would definitely fill a hole, both literally and physically. I do really like that pick. For my pick 101, I ended up going back with the Ohio State University. On the defense, we got Denzel Burke. If Denzel Burke is there, I believe that he would be a really good pick. Denzel Burke, 6'1", 193, but he hits like he's 210, man. He is a force to be reckoned with. He doesn't have many of the stats that a lot of the corners do out of college. But I do believe that he had between the last two seasons some really good film. Obviously, this year it's kind of hard to tell because he was on a very stacked defensive line, or not defensive line, but defense in the whole. And obviously, he had a lot of good secondary people, and you had the defensive line that didn't give the quarterback much time. So he was in a very ideal situation. But I do believe that he would be a good prospect. The Lions should consider.
Yeah, I like that pick too. Denzel Burke had a lot of hype coming into this year. I honestly haven't watched much of him either, but I'd be interested to dive into some tape on him because he had a lot of hype this year as close to a first-round pick, I believe. And I didn't hear anything all year about him playing particularly good or bad. So, I mean, that's honestly probably a solid thing because, corner, you're usually not getting talked about a pile unless you're making pick sixes or unless you're giving up touchdowns. So, he probably had a pretty solid year. Have to dive in and look at some film on him because that'd be a great third-round pick as well, getting a corner. Yeah, I like the pick for sure. Going into round 4 here, pick 132. I go receiver here. Danny receiver in the second. I waited till the 4th. I got Pat Bryant, the receiver out of Illinois. Saw bits and pieces of him during the season, just obviously being a Big Ten football fan, seeing him play a little bit for Illinois. 6'3", 200 pounds, kind of follows the same mold of what Danny was talking about earlier with Trey Harris. Gives a little bit of that height-weight speed vibe. Not that he's a burner, but he has good enough speed. A lot of his big plays we watch on film are just, contested deep ball, man. Doesn't create as much separation as I'd like him to, honestly. But I think also the role he'd fill for us is more of that possession, big-bodied, red zone threat type player. And I think day one he can give you a role with that. And like I said, this kind of would almost insinuate you probably re-sign Tim Patrick so he's like your receiver 4. But, even if not, I think he could give you a role day one, just being that more of that big body, contested catch type of player. Have to watch some more film on him, but definitely liked what I saw in the little bit I did watch. And he had a solid Senior Bowl as well.
Yeah, if we don't get Trey Harris, which there's a good chance that he doesn't fall to pick 60, I think Pat Bryant would be a good player to target. I was talking to Reed earlier. Truthfully, there is absolutely no depth at receiver, especially with these bigger guys. You got Tim. After Tim, man, say we extend him, he goes down. Man, these big body receivers are hard to come by, and there's no one really flashy in our roster that would be able to replace a guy like Tim or even just take over his role, say he does walk. We could really use a bigger receiver like Pat Bryant that could get more of those contested catches downfield, or, at the very least, to draw some pass interference calls. I know that's something that the Lions really struggle with this year. You can't rely too much on penalties, but they were very much lagging in the pass interference calls. They just couldn't really draw much, but this guy could definitely help extend the field some.
Definitely give him another threat down the field at least too, right?
100%. Yeah, not just like a burner threat, but legit get up there, get the ball, come down with it type thing.
Yep.
For my round 4 pick 132, I ended up going on the offensive line with a guy named Miles Frazier. Played at LSU. He's a guard. He's a senior this year. He's weighing in at 6'5", 325. Very big fella.
He had a really good Senior Bowl too.
He did. And man, I tell you what, I didn't really watch too much of him, but man, his ability to pick up blitzers is great, and that's something you really need. The NFL is so quick, and these guys coming in. This guy was really good at picking up incoming traffic with bumping off and bumping up the bump and twist type schemes of the defensive line. Man, he's just such a hard nose through the face mask type blocking guard. Man, he's just running people into the dirt. And as an ex-offensive lineman myself, it really gets you on your toes, man. It really gets the adrenaline going watching a guy having this much fun playing the game, just running people into the dirt, man. It doesn't get much better than that. So I would love to have a guy like Miles Frazier. I know we have Christian Mahogany, and he's pretty solid, but Graham is going to be up soon. So this could be definitely a guy that could take some time to develop and hopefully be a beast for the Detroit Lions if they do take a chance on him.
Yeah, no, I really like that pick too, man. Agree with the sentiment about the hard-nosed, I think they value that too. That's what I like about Gray's able to, just hard-nosed, physical offensive linemen. Guys, to preface, me and Danny both play offensive line, so you're going to hear us drool a little bit about these guys, but just because we appreciate it. He played the game right. Miles Frazier, man, if you get him in the 4th round, especially if you don't take an offensive line early, that is a fantastic pick, and I love the fit personally. So I really like that pick, Danny.
Thanks.
So going into round 6, pick 198, I'm going running back. I'm going Trevor Etienne, the running back out of Georgia. Didn't really take that, I don't want to say the starting role because he was the starting back, but you also had Nate Frazier and some other guys in that backfield contributing pretty significant touches. But, what the limited film I saw of him, I definitely liked him. Obviously, also watching some film from his time at Florida where I thought he really shined. Man, it was a fun watch, honestly, his film at Florida especially. Had a solid year at Georgia. I think he just brings a guy that is going to be, in the 6th round, you're looking for a guy who can either play special teams or give you legit depth. Personally, I'm on the move Sione Vaki back to safety where he's supposed to play campaign. I loved the Sione Vaki last year's draft cycle and was really hoping they'd play him at safety, and they drafted him as a running back. He was just to preface, guys, he was a gadget running back at Utah. He was a safety, and he was a great safety. I was so excited for them to have him in the lineup last year. And when guys started going down in the second year, I thought for sure they'd move him over to safety because he was making an instant impact on special teams. He wasn't really playing much on offense. I thought he'd find a role on defense by the end of the year. Really didn't happen. Maybe with Shepard getting promoted, maybe he wants him, maybe he doesn't. I don't know. This is kind of under the assumption that we need another running back. I don't think Sione Vaki is a true running back. I think he's a safety. This is your 3rd running back in Trevor Etienne, a guy who doesn't have a pile of wear and tear on him because, like I said, this year he kind of had that more, I don't want to say limited role because he did, like I said, did get a bulk of the carries, but a little bit more of a limited role. So I think he's a guy with all the talent in the world. I think he's explosive. I think he knows when to tackles well. He has good enough contact balance. I don't think he's a burner watching him on film, but it's hard telling. He's playing the SEC competition. All them guys are fast. Interested to see what he does at the combine, honestly, but definitely like what I saw on film with him. And getting him in the 6th round, like I said, you just need a guy who you think can profile as a good depth player. I think immediately he's a really good depth player for us.
I agree, man. I believe that would be great value in the 6th round if we can come up with Trevor Etienne. Someone like Craig Reynolds, Jamar Jefferson. I mean, we can only give them, 1-year deals for so long.
Agreed.
They are definitely they definitely contribute. But kind of recycling those players, getting them young. If we could get someone like Trevor Etienne to replace some of these guys, I really think that would be beneficial. So I do really like that pick. For my round 6, pick 198, kind of a reach. If he came to us here, it'd be somewhat of a miracle. But I ended up going with Jack Kaiser, the linebacker from Notre Dame. He is a little undersized, which is why I think he could fall a little bit. Although he did have a pretty good year this year. Obviously Notre Dame, their defense was pretty respectable. And he was somewhat the center of it, man. He did really good. He did pretty good in the Senior Bowl, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so he was pretty good. He is a little older, and again, a little undersized. But man, Shepard, he is, if anyone could coach up Jack Kaiser, and get him the pristine shape, it would be Shepard. We saw obviously what he did with Anzalone.
And Rodriguez.
Rodriguez as well. It's a good example. Just coming straight out of college. Rodriguez, very undersized linebacker, pretty stubby, 5'9", something like that. He's still popping dudes, man. He might be 5'11". That was
That might be a little bit disrespectful to Rodrigo.
Yeah, my bad, Mom. He whooped my butt, bro. He did like 35 reps with 225. Anyway, sorry, getting off topic here. But Rodriguez, man, he just be popping people, playing undersized. It'd be somewhat similar to what Jack Kaiser would be doing. This is a guy that just be all over the field. He's another guy that you really just kind of see how he does at the combine, and that might raise his draft stock if he does really good, which would decrease the chances of seeing him here at 198. But I would like Jack Kaiser if he was here.
No, I agree 100%. I like Jack Kaiser a pile. Haven't watched a pile of him in film yet, just from his playoff run with Notre Dame and then in the Senior Bowl. Liked him a lot. I think he's a guy the Lions would value. Like, you talk about that team captain type, just like hard-nosed football player. I mean, he's that. He's what he lacks in athleticism, I would say he makes up for in just raw instinct. Don't think he's going to go cover a running back out of the backfield one-on-one. But, you see him in zone. At the Senior Bowl, he had 2 interceptions. Granted, one of them, Jalen Milroe threw right to him. But that's a different topic for a different day, Jalen Milroe. But he just has good instincts, man. He's always there. He's playing the run well. He is pretty solid in zone coverage. Maybe a little more physically limited, like Danny was saying, but I love the pick. I personally think that our mock draft databases probably will be updated at some point. Because I do think that's a little bit of I don't think you're going to get him in the 6th round. If you do, you snag him in a heartbeat and you don't ask any questions. So, next pick, we got round 7. We have 3 7th-round picks to talk about here. I'm going to kind of go through these relatively quick. We'll go through one at a time here from each of us, but I think I'm going to go through these pretty quick here. So, we got round 7 pick 227. We got, and forgive me, I'm probably going to butcher his name, Oluwafemi Aladejo. Edge player out of UCLA. Absolutely loved him at the Senior Bowl. Haven't watched a pile of his regular season film yet, just like little bits and pieces. But, man, at the Senior Bowl, that dude looked unblockable at times. Legit edge player. I mean, you talk about JT Tuimoloau gives you more of that. You talk about like an early down, like run defender, edge setter with some pass rush ability that is there to be more developed, I would say. This guy brings just a raw athleticism, has good length, good bend, not nearly as refined as JT. That's why you're taking him in the 7th round. But, man, I love the upside of this guy. I thought at times in the Senior Bowl he was one of their better edge players. Didn't get a pile of hype, got a little bit. And I really think he's a guy, you're talking about guys you just want to find a role player or a depth player or a special teamer. He fits, I think, a role player day one on defense, just giving you more of a juiced up third down pass rusher. I think that's a great pick there at 227.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I don't really know much about him. I don't really know how to pronounce his name either, but I from what you're saying, man, I really like what I hear. I think that would be a good pick. Personally, at 227, I ended up going with Jabbar Muhammad, the cornerback from Oregon. He was kind of the CB2 there, but he definitely led the secondary. Just rally them. And Oregon, they were really probably one game away from winning the whole chip. So I really like what I saw out of him. The first time he ended up versing Ohio State, he was making big time plays. He's just a very solid corner. Just wraps up very well. Decent at pass coverage, but if he was there, I wouldn't mind this pick to get some more depth at corner.
Yeah, agreed 100%. I mean, a Big Ten starter, a guy who has a lot of games played, guy who played at a pretty high level. And it's 7th round. You're looking for guys. I think I've said it enough times now. You're looking for guys that can be a role player, or special teamer. I think he can be either one. So I'm gonna go round 7, pick 230. I took Kobe King, the linebacker from Penn State. This guy is like my Jack Kaiser pick in terms of like just the kind of role I think he could play for us. A hard-nosed, legit Mike linebacker. Lacks a little bit in athleticism, I would say. I think he's a tad stiff. But, man, is he a hard-nosed, just a football player, man. You watch him in the run game. He's good at getting off blocks. He uses his hands kind of just to shed. Makes a lot of plays behind the line of scrimmage. You see a lot of linebackers, especially in these last couple of draft classes, they make a habit of catching instead of like delivering big-time plays in the backfield. This guy can shoot a gap and win. This guy can get around you and win. This guy can go through you and win. He's a dog. He was a 2-year starter for Penn State. He's a Detroit native. That's kind of a cool storyline there. But, man, this guy's a football player. I think delivers some special teams value right off the rip, and I think with what our linebacker room has been going through the last couple of years, a lot of injuries, I think he's a guy that maybe starts in the practice squad and moves his way up and finds a role by the end of the season. So,
I would love Kobe King at 230. Especially the Jack Kaiser pick was kind of not a reach, but you know what I mean. Like probably a little unrealistic. Kobe King would definitely fill a need in our run game, and our run game's already pretty solid. But man, I do agree. I think he would be a force to be reckoned with. With my pick 230, I ended up going with Barron Sorrell, the edge from Texas. He's kind of another one of those guys who probably benefited a little bit from just the environment he was in. But he was pretty good coming off the edge. He ended up having 6 sacks his senior season. He's a little short. 6'4", 260. But he is a guy that could definitely offer some support. And with edge being such a limited with such limited depth at edge, he would definitely be another body that could potentially make the roster, and potentially add to our defensive line.
Yeah, I like it. Definitely could use some edge depth. I think we both double dipped at edge, and I think you double dipped at corner. Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking at kind of how our mock drafts differ with positional stuff, but I mean, yeah, I think we both doubled up at edge because we both agree it's a legit issue, man. We've seen the last couple of years with having a lack of pass rush with guys being injured can do to a team and do to a defense specifically. So love the pick. Get yourself a guy who played in the SEC, played at a relatively high level. Going to round 7, pick 246. Our final picks here. I got Dean Clark, the safety at Fresno State. Don't know a pile about him. I've heard a lot of good things about him. I haven't really dove into film on him yet. I'm just trusting guys I've listened to and watched on different draft sites and stuff like that. PFF, I know I've talked about him pretty highly. He's a guy that's going to be, I think, day one special teamer, kind of like a Sione Vaki, like I talked about earlier, just kind of brings them in that role immediately. And we need secondary depth. I didn't go corner in this draft class. I know it's going to be probably a little bit controversial amongst Lions fans. This is under the assumption we address that in free agency. I think a guy like DJ Reed or Charvarius Ward, one of them kind of guys, or even keeping Carlton Davis around. I think that's like what you do in the free agency cycle at corner. So that's why I took a safety here. Not a single corner taken, but I did address secondary in the last round. So
awesome. My pick 246, I ended up going with Junior Tafuna, the D lineman from Utah. Obviously, I'm not a big Utes fan or anything. But I do know this guy was popping off in the Senior Bowl, which is why with this generator, he was there. There's a good chance that if we were super interested in him, we would have to end up picking him a little sooner than the 246 pick. But this guy, he is a force to be reckoned with. 6'3", 308. He could definitely be one of those pieces that could replace Broderick Mark. Not
if he ever plays.
But I was talking more DJ Reed or anything.
Yeah, agreed.
Hopefully this guy's not like Broderick Mark. Don't even get me started. But yeah, definitely some guy that we could use on our D-line and get that thing buffed up and get our defense right.
Yeah, I got to say really quick before we sign off here, because I'm a huge Junior Tafuna guy. Hadn't heard of him a pile until I was watching the NFL Stock Exchange, shout out to PFF, and then watched a bunch of his Senior Bowl film. Man, that guy is a load. He's a load in the run game, but he actually showed a lot more pass rush than what I would have expected from him, hearing his build and hearing about his skill set. I think it trains a little bit more into the pass rush than I thought it would, especially in the one-on-ones. Just a legit dude, just a lot of power, a lot of explosion, and just a guy who's just a gap eater in the run game. I think it's a great pick. I think if there's any world you go into the 6th, 7th round and Junior Tafuna is still on the board, you take him in a heartbeat. I will say I think I'm higher on him than a lot of people are, but man, I think Danny's right. I think these mock draft databases will be updated here soon, so we can kind of get a little bit more realistic. So forgive us for that. We're just working with what we got here, but man, I absolutely love that pick to round out your mock draft, Danny.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. Like you're saying, more realistically, if we really wanted Junior Tafuna, we'd probably have to replace him with the Jack Kaiser pick at 198.
Yeah, there's a world, Danny, where I think he might fall into the 5th round. You might have to trade into the 5th round to get a guy like him.
Oh man, yeah. Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, like I said, I'm also a little bit higher on him than most though too, so that could be a little bit of my bias too.
Yeah, but you never know, man. He pops off in the combine, and then this hypothetical journey is the reality. So.
Yep.
But yeah, man, that is the 7th-round mock from both of us, man. I would love any of these players.
Yeah, agreed. I honestly think this was the first 7-round mocks you do every draft cycle are kind of, I don't want to say touchy, but especially pre-free agency, you're not quite sure how the team's leaning on certain free agency players. Luckily for the Lions, their biggest, I would say, loss this year will be Carlton Davis. There's guys like Levon Zarike. There's guys I say Kevin Zeitler. Kevin Zeitler's a big loss too. But I'm talking Levon Zarike, Derek Barnes. They're all good role players, but none of them are essential. You know what I mean? These are all guys. I think Levon Zarike's role gets replaced by Mekhi Wingo when he comes back healthy next year. Or Darren Alexander. You know what I mean? So you talk about guys like that. It's tough to forecast that, but I think this was a pretty solid set of mock drafts. Let us know what you think down in the comments below, guys. Danny, you got anything else to say?
Man, I'm excited to see, obviously, the combine. But I'm also excited to get another mock draft going, man. So, yeah, let's get it.
Yeah, we're going to try and start doing these every week because that would be kind of redundant. We have a long time to the draft, but I think our next one will probably do a full first-round mock. One of us will draft evens, one of us draft odds, that type of thing. But we'll figure that out when we get there. Guys, thank you so much for watching, listening, whether you're on Spotify or YouTube. Appreciate the support so much. Just giving two college kids a voice here to talk about football. We love you guys. See you in the next one.